Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Black Mom Society Town Hall. We are so excited to be here. Happy Juneteenth. I think, to be fair, I think this is a perfect way to celebrate Juneteenth because we're inside. It's not too hot. but just to let everyone know, I am Dr. Green. I am the CEO founder of Black Mom Society, and we are a mental health wellness space for moms, the empowerment of moms, the community of moms. And like I always say, it's for all moms, mom teas, god moms, grandmoms, any kind of mom, bonus moms, step moms, foster moms, moms of adopt, what, however you want. If you are a mom, you are here, and we are so happy to have you here. And I'm so happy to have Mrs. Clarissa Shepherd Hayes and also Mrs. Ada Ari here with us. They are both mompreneurs, authors, the bosses. I mean, this is a great among between the two of them. And I hope I did a good job with their bios on social media. But between the both of them, they both have mentions in Essence magazines, in fitness magazines. They are master instructors in their own spaces, master educators, and most importantly, they're moms, and they are family oriented, and their books have shown that. We have actually, I have one of them here, Sage Does Pilates, and also Lion's Promise, which is by Ada Ari. And it is an amazing, they both amazing books. They do great education for kids and also moms. So I'm gonna give them a little bit of time just to introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it.
Thanks. Say, do you want to go first, Clarissa?
Sure. Yeah, I can go first. So, hi everyone. So happy to have you guys here. Of course, thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. My name is Clarissa Shepherd Hayes, and I'm the author of Sage Does Pilates, which is a book that really helps educate children not just on a reading capability, but also from a physical standpoint. It's a very interactive book and a book that will get you moving and grooving, something that you can do right before bedtime or something that you can do, either middle of the day or at during recess or just doing an interactive story time. In addition to being an author, I am a Club Pilates master trainer, bar above master trainer. And so my passion is just really just trying to encourage people to find healthy ways to move their body. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm Ada Ari. I'm founder and CEO of Koli and Olam, and which sits under Ada Ari LLC. So I've created the largest collection of African language books in the world. I have almost 40 languages covered right now. And I also have created a series of African folk tales. We were talking earlier on before we came live about like DNA tests and finding out where we're from. Well, I wanted to go beyond just that and give people a sense of who were our ancestors, what languages did they speak, what stories did they tell, kind of like how here you have Little Red Riding Hood, three little pigs. So I've started going country by country around the continent of Africa, retelling our folk tales. And Dr. Green, you showed one of the books, one of them, this was from South Africa. So I have a collection of those. And I have other like just general books that children would love, activity books, but everything that I do is based on teaching about exposing to the continent of Africa, the different cultures, tribes, regions, and things like that. I also travel the country doing a program I call African Storytelling Reimagined. And it's just a great way to get children to learn about and celebrate African culture. So I bring authentic artifacts with me that I bring from back home. They get to learn our dances, look at our clothing, try on our instruments, all different kinds of things. Again, all wrapped around just bringing the celebration of and appreciation, respect for our African cultures and traditions.
Nice. And so we're just going to get right into it. So I'm going to ask, why is it so important for families, especially Black families, to build reading into their routines or into just their everyday lives?
I'll go ahead and answer that. I think it's really important because it helps you. To me, it helps build character overall. To me, it also shows some sort of discipline, especially when you just sit down, no distractions, no electronics, because we live very much in a heavy electronic based society. So I think, sitting down, reading a book to your child or having them read to you, because that's what I'm currently in the stage of with my 6-year-old, having her read to me. I think that builds discipline. And I also think it builds really, really good character, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of studies and research that has shown that reading and introducing children to reading at an early age, right from when they're infants and they're just listening to mom or dad or whoever the caretaker is reading to them. And as they grow into young adults and they're learning to read by themselves, there's a lot of research that shows that that helps with long-term academic success. It helps with literacy. And, here in the United States, we're seeing a lot of like lower literacy rates. So having these healthy reading habits at home combats that, like directly combats that. So it's very important.
Definitely.
Yes.
Can I piggyback off that too? I think it also helps with enunciation of words too, and being able to pronounce things, because I find, especially in this day and era, that there might be a word that people come to even as adults where they have a hard time saying it, and maybe to you or someone else it might be a simple word, but to them it could be a little bit more challenging. So I think, learning how to articulate words or learning different ways to inflect certain words, I think is really, really pivotal, as we continue to read to our children and make that a routine.
Yeah, that again, sorry, piggyback off of what you're saying. There's a lot of studies, right, that reading helps with building out vocabulary, helping with speech. So as children are getting to the age of where they're learning to speak, this ties into that as well. And then also, let's also talk about the fact that it helps with just broadening their minds, their imagination. Children start to see the world through the pages and the pictures in these different books that we're introducing them to right from an early age. So it really helps to expand their worldview. And that's why, like for example, with my books, these African folk tales, I want them to know that the world is full of amazing stories. And so while here in the United States, there are certain stories you're going to hear about, well, guess what? There's this entire continent of Africa and all these amazing stories as well. So it absolutely helps just broaden their mind and just help them realize that the world is this huge place.
I agree. And I mean, it's what I find so powerful every time I work with kids is that they bring a book with them whenever they're coming to sessions with me, or, even just doing observations. You see them with their books and they're able to say, this kid looks like me, or I, resonate because it's in Spanish, or whatever makes sense to them in the characters. I know even for my son personally, I intentionally buy a lot of books that have the main characters are Black boys, or just having that main be a superhero. So there's one book where the little Black boy, he's like a superhero. And now my son is like, to the rescue. He's like, I'm here to protect you. And he's like, I'm a superhero. And it's like, oh my God, it's so cute because he's getting that from the book. He's getting that from what's inside of the book. And I always tell parents, they don't have to read, the kids don't have to read every word or the sentences perfectly. It's just about confidence. It's about fluency. It's about just getting them to feel comfortable around books, words, having that so that they can then, be comfortable with the book, because the more they retain, the more they're able to, sound out the words and have that, those skill sets, it will come into. But we want them to be comfortable with books because, Adal, you're right. Literacy rates in America are low. And it's also to the interest in books, which I think is so issue too, because either, unfortunately, with our current climate, banned books is a trend. And so unfortunately, we're not seeing these books, which I think it's so powerful to highlight and name the both of you, because you intentionally focus on Black and brown children, folk tales, cultural folk tales, relatable work that I think will help for kids to and families to just enjoy reading. For
Do you
moms.
remember before COVID? Yeah, we're all moms here, right?
Yeah.
Before COVID, do you guys remember that one like CNN or BBC interview where the guy is having this serious interview with the child who runs in? And we were all like, oh my gosh, fast forward. We all have done it. We can all relate.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Hi.
And then clearly our kids are the same. They're in the age where like, oh, mommy's on the phone. Oh, well, I want to introduce myself and be part of the conversation too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So her
I'm
sister
sorry.
in the back like this, like walking down. It's like I don't want to be seen. So I know Ada, you touched on this. What inspired you to become a children's book author? But Clarissa, what inspired you to become a children's book author?
You are looking at the inspirations right here.
Oh.
Sage, who is my oldest daughter, that's who the book is named after. It came from, I want to say back in like 2018, 2019, when she was born, and I was still trying to find ways, quiet. I was still trying to find ways to be active. And I noticed that as she grew and got a little older, she started mimicking some of the moves that she saw me do because I was a Pilates instructor prior to having kids, and I just kept doing it, and she started taking heed. And in fact, some of the words in the book are her words because they are ways that she described how to do the exercises through the lens of a child, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I said, okay, how can we take that and like make it come alive. And so in the summer of 2023, a thought turned into a reality, and I just made it happen. Mm-hmm. So these two are my inspirations, and I'm working on another one actually at the moment for her. Yeah.
Don't give it away too much. We're here. We want the. You got to give us a sneak peek,
right?
And my kids were my inspiration as well. So I have now an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. But I remember when my firstborn was born and I was reading all these books to her, it just hit me, as an immigrant, I'm from Nigeria. I was like, there are all these stories that they haven't even heard because they're not growing up back home like I did. Mm-hmm. And I wanted them to have those same rich stories and culture. So I started writing down our ancient folk tales. I remember I wrote one that I remember growing up that, my elders told me. And I wrote it down, just a manuscript, and I shared it with a couple of different friends, mom friends of mine. One of my friends from Ghana was like, this reminds me of a folktale that we grew up listening to in Ghana. And so I got the idea, like, why not use this opportunity to just paint the picture and tell the stories of all the different folktales around the continent? So going country by country, retelling those stories. And I realized that, listen, if my children who are growing up here in the United States, if they can relate to these stories and enjoy them, then children of any and all backgrounds can relate to them and enjoy them as well. And so this just has been a really great opportunity to share our folk tales and introduce the world to our stories. So on the back of each of my books, like you'll see with the Lion's Promise there is a map of Africa, but the specific country that story comes from is shaded out. And so automatically, just by getting the collection, you're learning that Africa is this continent with different countries. You're seeing them. And then on the inside of every book, I purposely put these culture cards in there so that you can learn about the culture and traditions of the people who brought the stories to life. And now it's amazing because not only am I empowering my children to know their history, their legacy, their stories, but as they share these books with friends from all over the world, now people are learning about Africa, learning about our culture and our traditions. And it's just a great way to build this generation of global citizens. So it's an exciting adventure. And kids, they bring it out of us. They bring out the best in us.
And how do you bring that to life? So like how do you bring that to life?
So I was very intentional, and I invested heavily in number one, like how I illustrated the books, and even the way I told the stories. Because if you think of folktales, like literally think of Cinderella, right? It's an ancient folktale, but think about all the different people and ways that the story has been told and retold. You can go on YouTube right now, you'll see like 10 different Cinderella versions like that. I wanted the same for our stories, right? I look at so many stories that are told from different parts of the world. I wanted the same for ours, but I wanted to do it in a way that invites everyone. I didn't want it to be something that people would see and say, oh, I think this is only for African children or only for, I wanted to be inclusive and a way to really bring people in to discover who it is that we are.
Yes.
So in the way that I illustrated it, I really looked through the lens of my children. Again, they're second generation Nigerian immigrants, right? They're born here, but I'm looking at how it is that they relate to and how they enjoy stories. And I was very intentional about making sure the illustrations reflected that. Even in the writing, the way that I wrote, my stories are all written in rhyming patterns. This is really great. It helps children with their alliteration, the rhyming helps, but also it's told in a very fun and enjoyable way so that all children can enjoy it. But guess what? They're still getting the story. They're still getting the story at the core. And then even the way that I included the cultural bits as fun fact cards, they're just really cute index cards that kids can use and love and trade. But with each card, they're learning about culture. They're learning about tradition. So I always approach it from a learn by play standpoint, and it's been really fun so far. I think I mentioned that I go around the country. I do library programs. I had this partnership with Nordstrom. I'm in different community spaces and a lot of schools. I do a lot of school programs where in addition to a story time, I bring the culture to life. Like we're dancing, we're listening to Afro beats. I have them trying on kente cloth with our traditional jewelry and all different kinds of accessories. It's a great way for them to learn like how we carry things on their head, and they get to practice it. They get to practice backing our babies. So it's just a really great avenue to introduce young minds to the beauty of African culture.
I love that. That was really, that is so cool.
Cool.
Yeah, like that is so awesome. Yeah. I guess I'm somewhat similar in the regards of I really just wanted people to see Black people doing exercise. You know, I feel like, especially in the Pilates world, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Pilates, but more often than not, there's this certain image that's perpetuated when you think of Pilates, and it's not people who look like us, you know. And so when I was creating the book, I wanted people to say like, hey, like we do Pilates too. And not just, and I felt like if I maybe made it like myself or an adult, then people might say, maybe this is just for like Black children. So I felt like if I made it the main character a child, I thought so. And my thought process was that too would make it a little bit more inviting. And I found that people from all races have really taken the book by storm, and you know, and they're like, oh, because I even made a doll with it, and they're like, oh my goodness, she has little cornrows and braids in her hair too. And I'm like, yeah, that was super intentional. I really wanted to represent what my daughter looked like, and so adding the braids and adding the beads in her hair, that was really important, and I think that you know, it was a staple for me in the book as well. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
So cool. No, I love the fact that you have the doll, because I mean that just brings the book to life, and it's I can imagine my kids like they would love that because they can actually act out the entire plot of the story, and it just keeps the story alive, and they can pass it on. It helps them remember as well.
For sure. There's a cartoon too. So there's a doll book and a cartoon, and the cartoon just pretty much coincides with the reading, but you see this virtual interactive sage doing the exercises with you. And it's like a 10-minute cute cartoon. And I'm doing the voiceovers in my best kid voice. And I just made it be a thing and made it fun.
That's awesome. My goal is actually to go into animation. So we need to talk.
I was like, yeah, I can connect you for sure. Because
Bring in
I'm an animator.
the mompreneurs are coming to life. They're bringing like, how can we continue this? Yes, I think that's powerful. I mean, that's the perfect way to bring it to life. I love the fact that you have the visuals with the doll. And I know for a lot of girls, seeing themselves in a doll, I think is
Yep.
the best. It's the best thing, not only for self-esteem, but just as we know for beauty, you know, own confidence. And there's so many studies on it. Just the idea of the doll and black girls not seeing themselves and preferring a white doll because
Right. Right.
that's being presented and marketed.
Right.
So seeing themselves, I think, is powerful. And what Clarissa didn't tell you is that the doll is actually a relatable doll. It's not just, it's actually a very, very cute doll, very cute, very demure, and
That's
that she's being very humble. But, and
can I jump in there just on the topic of like dolls and being relatable? So growing up in Nigeria, like all the dolls that I had were like Caucasian dolls. I think back then that's a lot of what you found, right? And now, but the difference is that I grew up, I mean, I played with a doll and then I walked out of the house and everyone else looked like me, right? So I never really had to stop and think about it. And then now that I'm here as migrating as an older person, I still carry that with me, right? I know that there's a place where everyone looks like me. And now that I'm raising children in America, it's really, really highlighting how important it is that that representation is there because they don't have that same experience. So thank you for the dolls, for the books, for all these things that can help just normalize and let them know, hey, there are so many different races, so many different skin colors, but guess what? Yours is there too, and everyone can see it. You don't have to think that, you're less than or something is wrong with you because you don't look like the majority. Like these dolls, these simple acts, they're making a huge impact in helping them feel like they too belong and they too are completely normal and beautiful in their skin and their hair.
yes.
1000%. 1000%. That's exactly why I wanted to make the doll. Because for me, like you, I didn't grow up with black dolls. I had only white dolls. And I was big into Disney princesses when I was young. I didn't see I didn't see a black Disney princess until I was 16, 17 years old, where I was already past that phase. It was Princess Tiana. She came out in 2009. And I went out of my way to go see that movie, even though I was past that phase, just because that was the first time. The only one semi-brown was Princess Jasmine and Pocahontas.
Pocahontas, yes.
That's it. So I went with Pocahontas for the longest.
Same.
Same. So I really wanted young girls to have a doll that not just looked like them, but also represented their hairstyles too. So that's, like I said, that was really important to me. And I know you had mentioned that you were really meticulous in the artistry of your book. I felt the same way because when they originally sent those pages back, I was like, no, sir, we are not having this girl with straight hair. No, put some braids on her. I'm in the first page. Give me an afro, please. Because the time I had an afro bush, I said, no, give me an afro. Do not straighten my hair in any way. Give me a headband and an afro because that's usually how I rock it, unless I'm in braids.
And like that's so I can't tell you how important it is for me. Like before I became a mom, I would hear other immigrant moms tell me that, their daughters were asking, why is my hair like this? Because everyone else in school or in the playground, they have this kind of hair and that kind of hair. And I'm like, how am I going to explain this to my children? Because I never had to think about that for a second. Everyone's hair looked like mine. But now, thanks to dolls like yours and books representing their hair, it's a much easier conversation, not just for my children, but for everyone else around them.
Right.
Because the thing is, when we write books, we're not just writing books for our children or children who look like ours. We're sharing it with children of all backgrounds, and we're normalizing these things. So that's huge.
Right, for sure.
They need to understand they need that education as well, because at the end of the day, we all need to be understanding of all of our diversities, all of our all of our ethnicities, all of our cultural traits, because I cannot tell you how many times I've had, young girls, they'll come up to me and they'll say, why did they just touch my hair? Or why did they, I don't like that. I was like, well, how does it make you feel? And they're like, well, I don't like it because that's my hair. Why are they touching it? It's not, okay, it doesn't look like yours. I get it, but why are you touching my hair? And so just having those conversations where it's a tricky one, but at the same time, if they're coming to me for that, I have these conversations. But having the books, I mean, I definitely bring them out, even though they're much older than the books. It doesn't matter. I'm like, listen, let's look at hair love, okay, and let's see what's going on. Or just understanding that, especially with there were some TikTok trends a couple months ago with skin bleaching and being that coming back up on, back in the increasing in preferred cosmetic, surge cosmetics. And so cosmetic differentiation now. And so just having those conversations are more important now than ever. And the dolls and the books and the cultural traditions and passing that along, I think, is so important, because a lot of it is being watered down. It's not being spoken about enough. We want our kids to be proud of us. We want our kids to be proud of who they are, because that's what they have. They can't change, they can't change who you are. You got to be, you got to be proud of who you are.
Right.
And I'm happy that, as you're giving us as moms the tools that we need in order to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So important.
Yes. But I wanted to ask, like, as moms, you guys, so I'm a boy mom. You guys are girl moms. I know
I
Clarissa,
have more than one.
Girl moms too. Yeah.
you have one of each.
Yes.
So how do you have that conversation about hair, about just about beauty? Like, talk us through that.
Well, let me preface by saying, so like this weekend, I'm hanging out with a bunch of moms, my friends that I've grown up, like we've went to college together, we've been through it, and now we're coming and talking as moms. And we were just saying earlier today that we're all just trying to figure it out, right? Who knows what the right answer is? We may think we're doing the right thing, and then 20 years later, your kids are going to come and say, oh, the time you did A, B, or C.
Right.
So we're still trying to figure it out. And especially me, I keep coming back to my experience as an immigrant mother. There is so much that I try to just instill in them from what I grew up learning or having instilled in me. But there's so many gaps. And the hair conversation is one of those. I do not remember anyone talking to me about my hair growing up at all. And so I was like, how do I have these conversations? I really didn't know how to approach it, but it was kind of in the back of my mind. I remember my daughter was 4 years old, and I just wanted to let her hair breathe. I always braid it up. But I said, I'm going to send you to daycare in an afro. Just combed it out. She's 4. I mean, we all have children, so we know just how innocent they are at 4 and how they literally blurt out whatever they're thinking without any filter, which is great because you get to really understand their mind and how they're thinking. And they're such sponges. So at that young age, you can really fill them with good stuff, with knowledge, with the truth. So my daughter came back from daycare and she just made some kind of like offhand comment like, oh, I think someone said something about my hair. And immediately I was like, oh, I can do one of two things. I could brush it aside because it was never a big deal for me growing up, or I can stop and pay attention to the fact that this could be like a foundational moment. And so I reached out to her daycare. I'm like, hey, I think someone was like surprised or curious about my daughter's hair. I want to come in and I want to take my wig off and show them my cornrows. I want to show them my daughter's afro. I want to show them this child who maybe has straight hair because she's from like this particular country, or this child who has curly hair, red hair, all the different kinds of hairs, and just talk to them about the fact that there's so many different types of hairstyles, right? There's so many different types of hairs, hair textures. Even within the same skin color, you might have different hair textures. Mm-hmm. So that was like one thing for me. But then secondly, and now my daughter, she's older, and she'll sometimes say, I want longer hair. I want this and I want that. And I tell her, listen, your hair can do cool things that some other people's hair cannot do. Like you
Right.
can put it up in an afro and it will stay in that state. It doesn't fall all the way down, or it's thick and you can straighten it. It'll look like this. You can braid it up. You can do all different kinds of things. So it's all about just appreciating all the things that your hair can do in the state that it's in. I love braiding her hair, and she always looks at it and she loves the way it looks as well. And I mean, I think the more that she sees that, and that she sees other people with the same types of hairstyles. I mean, I take her back home to Nigeria all the time. She's starting to realize that there's beauty in this, and that's the key. But then also having her equipped with the tools to be able to say, if someone else were to ask her, oh, hey, why does your hair look like this and not like that? Well, hey, this is beauty where I'm from. This is beauty for my skin tone. This is beauty for my people. So I don't know that I have all the answers, but it's just making sure that I address it and not brush it aside anytime that it does come up.
I like
For
that.
sure. No,
I
I
like
love
that conversation with that daycare.
it. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I remember I brought it up and I had a bunch of people who were like, oh no, that's probably coming from back home. I'm like, no, these are 4-year-olds. They have no idea. They just blurt out whatever they see that looks different. And we could do one of two things. We could either just say, oh, that's a horrible thing. How dare you ask that, never ask that question? Or we could use that curiosity and feed it with the truth, with good information. Like, well, actually, there's so many different types of hair. We wear extensions. We wear, we have this thing back home called thread, where you literally just wrap thread around your hair. So many different hairstyles, right? So there are all these things that it's just great to expose young minds to, because once they get it at a young age, they grow up with such a broad understanding of the world. And that's how we build global leaders who are thinking globally and who are looking at differences as something to celebrate and not to be afraid of.
Wow. I don't even know what to say after that. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here.
That's so good.
Drop the mic. She did it.
I know. Seriously. The way that I'm just like, I don't know what to say. The way that I guess I help instill beauty in my 2 young daughters is in after bath time in the mirror. I did it today. I held them up and I had them look themselves in the mirror, and I just say, look at those eyes, look at that nose, look at that face, look at that beautiful hair. I did that to the little one. And then the older one, I've been doing this with her since she was little. I would say, look at that beautiful baby. She's my best friend and I love her. And like, I've been saying that nonstop to the point now where she repeats it too. So just, saying those affirmations and letting them know like they are beautiful as they are. I'll even say things like, oh man, look at that hair. I wish my hair looked like that. Like I kind of make it like a little bit of a game with them. And then Sage will sometimes say, well, mommy, your hair does look like that. I'm like, you're right. But sometimes you have the beads in yours. So you got me beat, girl. Like I kind of make it a game for her a little bit. And she really enjoys that. And it's also instilling that aspect of beauty, because she's right now, because I'm in Sterling, Virginia, she's the only Black child in her class. So yeah. So there have been, luckily, if there was anything that happened this past school year, I think she had enough confidence to handle it. I didn't, from what she told me, there wasn't anybody, talking about her in that regard. If they didn't want to be your friend, it was just over a minor disagreement over like a toy or something like that. But there wasn't really anything, at least that she had said to me, that was maybe hair related, beauty related, skin color related. Like I said, she's the only Black child in her class. And I think those daily affirmations that I've been doing, gosh, for the last 6-7 years almost, I think they're starting to pay off. But I don't have all the answers either. So I don't know. But that's my tidbit. Mm-hmm.
Someone mentioned this to me in passing. I mean, we all have young kids right now, but someone mentioned, I think they had like a teenage child, or I think that older children, but they'd been through the teenage phase of raising Black kids in a predominantly non-Black environment. And when it came time to like crushes and things like that, the boys or whoever, might be crushing on the girls, they were so used to maybe like people who look like their mothers. And I mean, that's natural, right? You're like attracted to maybe what it is that you grew up around. And so while her children are so beautiful and amazing, they were developing some sort of like a complex because they weren't being picked to go for the dance or being asked out, all those things. And that really hit me. And I don't have an answer for it to this
Yeah.
day. But these are things that are coming down the pike, right? And so, like, I love what you're saying about the affirmations, the daily affirmations, planting those seeds while they're young, because as they grow, I hope that they will be in a place where they're like, oh, if you are not attracted to people with this particular skin tone, that's just a choice. That doesn't say anything about who it is that I am or how I look. It doesn't diminish me in any way. They're just different strokes for different folks.
Right, right, exactly. And something that I do too is I've also try to make sure that I expose her to, other Black people like myself. So like I bring her, like, even though my particular, like, or her school per se is, it's pretty mixed. There's a lot of Hispanic people there as well. But she just happened to be the only Black child in her class this past school year. But I also make sure, like, I take her to different things where she will be exposed to other Black children. Like, for example, I took her to the Juneteenth event today. It was everybody. I mean, there was a few white people there, but everybody there was Black. She saw the Black kids. She's bouncing in the bounce house with them. She's interacting with them because, I do want her to make sure that she still is having those experiences with her Black children, because that's kind of how I grew up. I didn't grow up in this type of, I guess, atmosphere, so to speak. I wanted to be able to provide a different type of lifestyle than the one that I had growing up. And I think a lot of people probably do that too. But there are some shortcomings in that. And, the lack of diversity and exposure is definitely one of them for sure. So I try to do those things.
Looking for that diversity is like always top of mind for me as well. One thing I will say, having grown up back home where everyone looks like me, coming to America was a huge like multicultural experience for me.
I bet
because
it was
the first time I got to discover, I mean, we watch TV, like, Hollywood is everywhere. So growing up, I remember thinking there was just like black and whites. And it's not until I came here that I discovered that there's so much more in between. Like, there's Hispanic, there's Oriental, there's, different Asian backgrounds and all those things. So one thing I will say is while we still want to make sure that they have that appreciation for and love of their skin and who it is that they are and how they look, it's also great that they're getting to see that there's so many different shades, many different colors, so many different backgrounds. So it's just this balancing act, right? Like we want the best for them. We want to make sure that they appreciate just as we want them to be appreciated, but we want to make sure that they also love themselves as they are.
For sure. Tenfold.
Parenting, man.
I know, right? Never ending.
We got to think about all the things, and half the time it's like, okay, all right, guys. But it's definitely, but you guys are really dropping some gems for people. I hope everyone's writing them down. I know I'm taking notes in my head. Yeah, but so going back to some of the published, like you're going back to being a first, your first time author. I mean, you guys are like well established right now in the author space. What were some of the challenges you faced when you were starting out? Or if there were none, then that's fine.
Easy breezy.
Yeah. So you asked what were some of the challenges you said?
Yeah. Or if there were any.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I think back to the process, just figuring out how to turn this idea into an actual book. I just trying to find a publisher it was a difficult task because of course, like you type in, okay, how to publish a book, all these links come out. But then I wanted to have full ownership, like that. Having ownership of like my book was very, very important to me, and having ownership of my images was also really important to me. So I had to do a little bit more research to find an illustrator that would illustrate what I wanted them to do and allow me to still own the images. Because there's always like that weird spot where they're like, well, we'll do it, but we get this certain percentage or blah, blah, blah. So I found that particularly challenging. I've also found trying to have finding the sweet spot to have a profit margin for your book, right? Because these like certain companies, I won't say them, but you order these books and they cost like an arm and a leg. And then you're thinking to yourself, how can I sell this book this children's book at this outrageous price, right? To try to make up for the amount that I spent to get them published. Finding that sweet spot, because like you're supposed to do like a 30% or 40% markup, but it's like, all right, well, do I really want to sell a children's book for like $25? Not really, because most people probably won't buy it, and then I went and looked back at the average cost of a kid's book, and I saw it somewhere at the time, it was like $12 to $15. I'm like, all right, well, it costs $12.12 per book. So I guess I need to go a little higher. So those two things, just finding a person that will create the images that I have in my brain. And that way I can have full ownership of it. Finding a printing company that isn't overcharging me was really, really big as well. So I would say those two things are really big challenges for me in this process.
Did you print here in the US or did you print overseas?
I printed in the US, and I'm kind of glad. I mean, and I still print in the US because of the tariffs, that's a whole thing. But I print in the US. I was originally using BookBaby. And then I now just switched to printing USA. It's been a lot cheaper and they get them really, really quick. So I do appreciate that. So now like the cost per unit went down drastically from it. Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean by protecting your images? And
so I'm really big, like I said earlier, on like ownership of things. So I made sure that the illustrations in my book, like I own them. Whereas sometimes with books, you might have an author and then you have an illustrator, and the illustrator will own your images. Or if you go with a certain company, a company may create your images, but then you can't use them to put on a t-shirt. You can't do all these other things with them. They can only be for the book. And that's not what I wanted, because I knew that I wanted to get my work copywritten and I knew that I wanted to get it trademarked. So that's why I was really big. I was like, I will pay the money up front. I probably paid a little more than I should, but it's mine. And I own those, like the Sage book, the doll, the cartoon, those images. I own it. It's trademarked. So I was really big on ownership. So that's what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm. So how do you have that conversation? I'm so curious. So how do you have this conversation about the ownership of the images and all that? Because I think that's very, as a business owner, that is very important, because you start outsourcing your stuff, and I know I can't draw.
Right, me either.
I failed art. My mother, she's probably on this call. She knows. It's like, listen, you're not an artist. Go read a book. So I can't draw. So if let's say, how do you do that process? Like, what kind of conversation are you having? Like, what's going on there?
I really love clarity. Like I view and this comes down to like just my overall views. Like there is some gray, of course, but for the most part, like I see the world in like black and white. Like it either is or it isn't. So when I'm having these conversations, I'm very like clear to the point and direct. Like, hey, if we do this contract or we do XYZ, what are the benefits for you? What are the benefits for me? Will this give me full ownership? Like I just straight up asked. I was like, will this give me full ownership? And they're like, yes. I said, okay, can I see that in writing? Can we sign a contract? I'm very big. Can we sign a contract? So that way, if anything were to come back, I have this piece of paper stating that I own these images. Because I asked them, I want to say 3 or 4 times. I'm like, just so we're clear, I was just literally, they probably got annoyed by me a little bit. I said, just so we're clear, I own these images, correct? I have the email link, and I have it written from the contract that I have with them. It just comes down to just not being afraid to kind of ask what it is that you want. I think us as women, and particularly Black women, we sometimes are afraid to, ask those hard questions, especially when we're in like maybe a predominantly male field, or like, I think publishers probably are mainly like male predominant, but I noticed that sometimes you have a hard time, asking for clarity or certain things, or we might be perceived as, what per se. And so I just, like I said, I just went for it. And if they didn't like the answer, then I found somebody else because I felt like I was paying them for a service. So I know it may not be the answer that you wanted, but it's real.
But also, I think it's all about finding the right partner, because I've worked with a number of different illustrators, and there are some who are like, oh, they want this percentage, they want this, and they want that. And then there are some who fit more what it is that I'm looking for. So I always get exclusive rights as well. And one thing I will say, I'll say this and then I'll go back to your question about like just the challenges of writing a book or publishing a book. But one thing I will say is that it's not just about like the product, right? Not just about the image, but it's about how you sell it, right? And how you market it. Like, how do you make that thing desirable that people want it? And so a lot of times the illustrator I'm not an illustrator. I have zero designer art skills as well. But finding the illustrators who are focused on, really just creating those great images for you, because maybe their process and their value proposition and what they're looking to do is, really focus on the arts, versus the ones who are focused more on like owning the book. They're going to go about it a completely different way. But there's so many different illustrators, and there's so many that will fit the bill for what it is that you're looking for. So I work with at least 3 illustrators like in heavy rotation. But for me, I had a lot of the same challenges you did as well. Access, right? The publishing industry is I find it to be very gated, especially if you want to get like some really good quality product out into the market. You are really I'm really trying to force and fight my way through. But you find your own lane and you just go all the way and you keep pushing. That consistency and never giving up, that's really what makes or breaks. But I had all the struggles as well. I initially, I just really wanted to get these books out there, but I wanted my books to stand on the same shelves as the award-winning books out there, the top of the tops. So I went to and I found those editors. I found those illustrators. I paid premium for all the different services, the printers, the everything. And it took a lot of time and a lot of money to sample, to get samples created, sample imagery, sample printing, sample products, all those different things. And that was extremely challenging. And I'll tell you that a lot of people have the passion of telling a story. Not a lot of people have the patience and the funds required to go through all those cycles. He talks about going from one printer to the next, all the time in between. There's so much that goes into it. So what I've done, because now I'm sure you have the same thing, Clarissa, a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, I wanted to write a book. How did you do it?
Yes.
And I'm like, listen, so I actually offer a service now. Like, if people are interested, I do what I call a la carte publishing. Like, if you want an editor, I'll give you an editor. If you want illustrators, here's a Rolodex. If you want printers, here are all the different things. Because I suffer to figure all these things out. You don't have to suffer the same path. Now we're a repository of information. You can cut through all of those questions. I remember you saying, you go online and you say, how do you publish a book?
Right.
Right. You know what's correct? How do you know what's wrong? And then, even if you wanted to get someone else to publish for you, it's such a tough challenge, right? Like, if you're going to go the traditional publishing routes, there is a tight funnel and a long timeline, and you lose a lot of ownership, creativity, and all those things, right? If you want to go the non-traditionally published route, there are so many different businesses that offer you services, but at what cost? Like, their focus is just on making money. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, right? Because we're all entrepreneurs in this space, but that didn't serve me personally. So Now I'm always thinking about what I looked for, what I needed as someone who was just starting out, and how do you create that for people who want to follow that same path? That's what I
Tenfold. The first publishing company I reached out to, they were a scam. I got scammed the first time. So, it's
How
tough.
did you know?
When I was looking over the contract, I didn't send them any money yet. But I was like getting ready to, and I said, let me look at this again. And then I think, what, maybe I did send them like $100 or $250, but I sent it through PayPal or something just in case, so I could get my money back. And then for maybe like a couple of days, they went ghost. And I was getting frustrated because I was like, wait a minute, like this is not what you promised. Like you said, we would have open communication. Where are the images? What's going on? I didn't hear anything until maybe a week and a half later. And the guy was like, oh, well, we just went away on vacation. I'm like, okay, well, that would have been nice to have been told, what was going on. You weren't on vacation when we were hitting me back and forth, trying to get my money and trying to get me to sign this. Now you're on vacation. Like what? So, that was a tough experience for me. And luckily it didn't make me give up because I considered it after that. I was like, maybe this writing a book is not for me, but a little birdie was like, no, keep going. You'll find somebody. And I did.
Keep going.
Yeah, just going. Mm-hmm. Wow, those are some serious challenges, but I mean,
yeah, right.
But I mean, we've learned something here. Like ownership is everything. I'm sure you pay for it. You need your exclusive rights.
Yes.
Making sure you get your stuff up front and understanding profit margins.
Yes, that's huge.
Yes. Y'all can you guys expand on that with the profit margins? And I mean, this is just we're dropping a little bit because if you want more, you need to,
right.
These are your consultants here.
For sure. Yeah. Because I'm doing a workshop July 13th on like writing a book and stuff like that. But you have to be able to understand the profit margin. And that's not even just for books. That's just in general. If you're going to sell any retail product, the general profit margin usually ranges somewhere between maybe 30 to 50% markup. So for example, if you buy like something for $1, at minimum, you should charge $3. So that way you make, so that way you get that nice ROI or return on investment. When it comes to book selling, I found, at least in my experience, it was a little harder to do maybe like a higher end, 50% markup, kind of like how you do with clothing, because the cost per unit, at least in my case, was $12.12. And that's real because that's a very specific number. And so finding a way to make some sort of profit margin was challenging for me because I'm like, okay, who really is going to buy a book for, $20 or $18, whatever the case was. And so I now made it $15, right? And I actually met with a guy, very, very well-known author. His name is Ty Allen. I think that's how you say it. I think he writes these books about kids making money, kind of like the Shark Tank dude, kind of like that. But he's not him, but he's pretty up there also. And I just randomly sent him a DM on Instagram. And I was like, hey, I want to know how you do this. And surprisingly, he messaged me back. And these are some of the tidbits that he gave me. And he said, if you want to make money in the author side of things, you have to, number one, get public speaking and go to schools and events. Number two, you have to buy in bulk. So the more books you buy, the more it will make the cost per unit go down. So yeah, you might spend $1,500 at first on a bunch of books. But when you do the math, it makes it $6 or $5 a book. So you get that ROI. So those are so essentially long story. That's how you do the profit margin. You want to make sure you're buying in bulk and you want to have it somewhere between a 30 to 50% markup, 50% if you can.
And we should talk because I have $12. I have some printers that can beat that down.
Oh, wow.
So we can talk offline. But profit margin is very interesting for me. So my background is in corporate America strategy operations. And so when I think about the profit margin piece, I'm not going to share my profit margins because it's a different discussion altogether. But my process involves a lot more. So one, there's the cost of like editing it, right? I pay editors. My illustrators, they come in at a premium. I'm paying those. And those are like fixed costs, right? You pay those once and that lasts for the lifetime of the actual book itself. Of course, there's registration, there's the ISBN, all those pieces, fixed cost. Then the unit cost, right, is how much it costs to print each one. I print in bulk for that reason, but then comes the marketing cost. So how often do you think about marketing as well? So you can say I'm going to print a book for $10. I'm going to mark it up that 30%. But if you don't think long term into how much you're going to spend on marketing it, you'll be surprised that margin disappears quickly. So there's so much that goes into like publishing a book. And I always tell people, like when people come up to me and they say, oh, they want to publish a book, my first question is, what are you looking to do out of this? Like, what is your goal? If your goal is to fulfill this passion and it's kind of a hobby on the side, that's a completely different like discussion and equation from I want to quit my job and be a full-time author. Completely different. And both of them are valid, two very valid paths, but just two very different ways of thinking about it. And, you know, we're thinking about the business side, the passion side. There's a little bit of both either way, but like how are we kind of, you know, how are we kind of balancing that equation that comes into view, depending on what you're looking to get out of it. But it's margins. Yeah. And even when you set your book at like, you know, I'm going to charge X amount, I don't know, 5, 10, 20, whatever dollars for the book, you're constantly challenging yourself to expand that margin by finding ways that you can reduce costs. And that's not just for books, that's for any and all businesses. You're always finding people who are providing like proposals saying, hey, this bridge you're building, I can provide the cement at an even lower cost. So that the next day you go to build a bridge, I'm helping you, you know, like expand your profit margin. That's just business altogether, like forever and ever. And the same thing happens in books as well.
Tenfold.
I like this business. So we were like, you're getting a full thing here. Okay, we're talking about literacy. We're talking about diversity in products, self-esteem, identity. Like we're giving all the things here. This is like what the mom. I love this because this is as moms like, and mind you, they're still moms. They're still here with all the kids, managing a household, doing what they need to do, and they have businesses. I mean, I would say like moms, we are dynamic. Black women in general, we're just amazing. But we're doing some great things. I mean, just this conversation alone is like I feel like we need to have a separate conversation.
Multiple separate.
I mean, I've never thought about writing a book, but I'm like, okay, that's a lot.
Right. It doesn't seem like it at first, you know, because you just see the end product. You see this book that maybe got 20 pages in it. Oh, somebody write it, boom, it's done. But there's so much that goes into it. And especially just being able to have the patience. Because like you might come out with this idea of a book, say summertime, and then you might not actually hold it in your hand until January or February of the following year. Like
really?
That was similar to my process. Yeah.
Wow.
Just being able to actually hold it tangibly in your hand. So it just really, you just have to have that patience.
That's truly a test of patience.
I gave a really good spill on that. Like, yeah, you have to be about the patience.
Can I just I mean, it's not my thing anymore because now it's a different story. But when I first published my book, I don't even want to tell you how much I invested before I finally had my first published book. Ridiculous amounts. Yep. And then I'm out here trying to hustle and sell them. And do you know how many people kept asking, oh, can I get them for free?
Oh.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
But now, initially, I used to be so annoyed by that. But now, guess what? That's part of your marketing costs. Like knowing that there are specific people who you're going to have to give free copies to just to push the product out there, that's key. I didn't know any of these things when I started out, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I tell you,
Right.
it's been a journey and a half.
For sure.
But I'm like on the complete other spectrum. So for me, 10% of all the proceeds I donate to orphanages back home, because like I mentioned earlier, my folk tales, they're all stories that were designed and created for children back home. So it's always important to give back. And then now I just started a 501c so that I'm partnering with business owners and individuals to donate free books to children in Title I schools. And that's going back to that whole bit about how literacy rates improve when children own books they can take home.
Yes.
It's also a really great tool for bonding with their caregivers because they're reading these books together. There's so many great things that come out of it. It's like long-term academic progress and achievement is all tied to owning books at home. So now I'm on the complete other end of the perspective of the spectrum. But at the beginning, when I was like, you want a free what?
Right. Same.
Oh my God.
And vending costs too. When you go to being a vendor, like there's a lot of vending costs. Like now,
PayPal takes a cut, credit cards take a cut, everything takes a cut, everything.
Square.
Square, Square. Yes.
So now that we're in the summertime, and I always say, the kids always they take their brains, they drain it out, and they put it by the school doorstep. They're like, bye, and they just walk out, and then they pick it back up in September, and they like, okay, and they put it back in. And we know that there are a lot of studies out there that talk about, that's not, that we want to encourage, reading. We want to encourage some kind of retention, some kind of academics, because it helps to grow a child, especially during the summertime. We don't want the children to forget, because then that affects not only their cognition, but just their overall, ability to then come back to school and remember anything or be able to like move forward. So what are some routines or some advice you can give to parents that are here summertime and need their kids to encourage to go read a book, and maybe that's a struggle? What are some some advice, routine, anything you could share?
I think you have to set the example. I think it's hard to get somebody to do something that they don't see you doing. And so for me, like, I will either read the book to my child, or I have her read it to me, or on occasion she might see me like looking through notes or reading something. So that's like my first tip. My second tip would be basic, like do the reading either with your child or encourage them to read during a time where they either feel maybe a little bit more relaxed or energized. It kind of can go either or, right? Because if you're really, really tired and you just kind of want to space out, it's probably not the best time to ask your child to read a book, because they may not be in the mental capacity to do it. So if like your child is a little bit more alert, maybe in the morning time, maybe that's when you do your story time with them, or you maybe ask them to read a book versus in the evening, or vice versa. So I think it's really important to pay attention to like your child's energy levels and how they respond, to certain things during or at certain times of the day. Like for me, nighttime, it would be the best time for me to read a book, because I'm very high energy in the morning. And so reading just wouldn't like really, I guess, motivate me at that particular time. And maybe a child might be similar. So like I said, just knowing the different time of the day that your child maybe has the most energy, and also you, because if you are a person that maybe works, 9 to 5, because we all still have jobs, or, even if you're an entrepreneur, it's really hard to try to make time for certain things. So I would also maybe suggest putting on the schedule as well, like book an appointment, with you and your child, and making sure that you stand on it. Like in my calendar that I have right here, well, I'm missing it now, but 8:00 I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah, but
That's
it's
another
6
tradition.
little reminder came through 8 o'clock. I don't count it. Keep the seat. I'm missing it today. But on average, we do it around 8 o'clock.
We're almost there.
Almost there. Yeah. So those would be my tips.
And so what I will say is, and again, this is for my kids 6 and 8 right now. Learning is still fun, and there's this whole school there's this whole school of thought around learn through play, and so I try to do that with everything when it comes to teaching them. So I talked about when I'm teaching in schools, right? I'm embedding dance and music and all these different movements and things like that, but they're learning because at the end of every session, I actually ask them questions and they've retained all that knowledge. Same thing with reading. When I read to my children, with every page, we pause and we're talking about it, we're acting out, we're doing something animated. Like I either have them doing something as simple as just like making the sound that the birds make or whatever it could be, or clapping, or like just kind of relating to the page. So it's not so monotonous as like, just getting through a book, but it's making it come alive. And again, kids really love to learn. So like my daughter now, she loves to read and she's at that stage where she can read by herself. My son is entering that phase. So when we're reading, I'm pausing at every sight word. What's that sight word? I'm making it interactive. I'm incorporating that. We're all alive and well and safe, but let me tell you what my parents did when we were teenagers. Over the summer, they would take us to the public library and leave us there for hours. And we had nothing but all these books. Now, I'm not going to do that to my children right now, but taking them to the library with me is fun.
Yes.
And reading a couple of books while we're there, and then taking other books home. So we're keeping it fresh. They have so many different options to choose from. That's an experience in itself. And that's something that's great that you could do over the summer as well. And then different activities like, okay, we're going to spend maybe a week on this one book. Today, we're going to read the story. Tomorrow, maybe we're going to like quiz. Okay, what happened first, second, and third, like sequencing. Maybe the next day, some sort of art project where either coloring or drawing or tracing along the lines of like something that happened with that story. Just keeping it interactive is a great way just to keep them engaged and keep reading fun and alive. But at this young age, I feel like learning is so much fun that they're excited to keep doing it. One of the things that I actually developed were these activity books. I call them Discover Africa activity books. Each one is a specific country. But in addition to learning about culture, they're doing it through like coloring. So I have them coloring the flag of Ghana, for example, but they're learning what the colors of the flag mean. Or I'll have them do trace by numbers, but they're tracing the map of Nigeria or Kenya. Or I'll have them doing additions, but they're adding like the currency of the specific country. So kids love these things. They just love to learn. They love to add. They love to do the different things that they are learning in school, but just make it fun. So that'll be my tip. Over the summer, just keep doing more of what they're doing because they love doing it, but just make it fun.
I like that. I like the activity book with the currency and the map because, I mean, geography is not really taught as much. Well, where I'm from the Caribbean, so it was a little bit different. But that's good that they're learning about geography. They're learning about currency. So you're instilling not only just literacy, but also math in their history. And you're like getting them to think in different ways and building. I like that. I like that a lot. And activity books come with the book or?
No, I mean, I have like 3 different collections. I have the African language collections. I have the folktale, the storybook, the picture book collection, and I have the activity book collection. But each one is something that any child can do and enjoy, but it's always layering on some sort of like African culture or learning or tradition in there.
Yes. And so how can people get in touch with you, buy your books, buy your collections, buy the dolls, get the cartoon? Like how can people get into your spaces?
So they can go to pilatesmommy.com, and mommy is spelled MAMII. They can also get the book on Amazon. The dolls, you have to contact me. I have them on my website, so you have to go to pilatesmommy.com. And then as far as the cartoon, just type in Sage Does Pilates on YouTube, and it will pop right up. Yeah.
And for me, everything you can pinpoint from my website, Ada, ADA-ARI, adaari.com. And you have it there. I am on Etsy, on Amazon, on actually I'm in a bunch of places. I'm on the Barnes and Nobles and the Walmarts and all those things. But go to my website. Everything is there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that and any advice you have for moms that are maybe looking to get into some type of business, not even just, the author's space, but any business in general.
I would say do something you're passionate about, because business, or if you would like entrepreneurship, is extremely challenging from day one through day last. There's so many different hurdles. Like you talked about the tariffs. We're sitting here thinking we're solving problem A, and then all of a sudden problem B comes up.
Yeah.
Or I always think back to COVID. Like imagine people who open businesses thinking they were going to do this, and then COVID comes and just decimates the entire thing. So start with passion, because when the challenging times come, and they will come, passion is what's going to push you forward. So I would always say start with passion.
Amen to that, for sure. I definitely agree with that sentiment. I'd also maybe add, look at your tribe also. Because a lot of times in entrepreneurship, we think, we have to do everything by ourselves. And especially being a mom, at least in my line of work, in order for me to go to a vending event, or in order for me to go speak at a school, I have to make sure I have childcare. That's a number one priority. Even just to do this, I have to organize certain things, like, hey, make sure the baby is here. So we're like, just the simplest things. So making sure that you have a really good, supportive, team person, or anyone in your life before you really take the leap is going to be really, really important. I think having really honest conversations with family members and friends about like what it is you're trying to do and what that looks like on a grander scale is super vital. I made mistakes along the way. Hopefully they're better this time, but that's something that I've learned over the past like 4 or 5 years while being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been quite an empowering town hall. We are so happy to have Ada and Clarissa with us, sharing their knowledge, dropping gems, strategies. We learned so much. We got business literacy, math literacy.
Right.
We got everything in here. So
business literacy, profit margin. I mean, we got it all.
Marketing.
Seriously.
Yes. And so we are so thankful. We thank you for joining us. We thank you for being here with us. To those that are on YouTube and Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. We also have some people that are on the back end because they're on the links. So we thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time for another town hall. We are doing one on men's mental health because this month is Men's Mental Health Month, and so we'll be doing another series on that in the next week. Yeah. So stay tuned. Make sure you please like, subscribe Pilates Mommy on YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram, and also you're on YouTube too, right?
Yeah, YouTube. Mm-hmm. They're on YouTube.
And Ada is on Instagram. I know you're on Instagram, Ada Ari Books. And also you can find her website. She's coming to a school near you, a city near you, a country near you very soon. All her events are on her website, so you can see that, as well as she's you said in Nordstrom's, Barnes and Nobles, Walmart, Amazon. She's everywhere you want her to be. Okay. And the great thing about it is that they're also in the local DMV area, so you can always check them out in different spaces here. So we will see them next time. Black Mom Society, thank you for joining us, and we will see you for Men's Mental Health.